My Gavanan and well met, I'm Arachír Galudirithon, head of Divide and Conquer, and here today with another video explaining one of the factions of our mod. And this time we're starting with a faction which I believe is only present in a couple of mods, ourselves and I believe the Turtle mod, and that is the Clans of Enedwaith. Now I've begun with this screen just showing because we get asked quite a lot how you unite the clans, which is a script I'll talk about more in detail in a moment. But I will just mention that at the very beginning of the game with the Clans of Enedwaith, it lists here, and you can see where my mouse is, it lists every region that you need in order to unite the clans. So if you are unsure, just read this message and it will certainly reveal the truth to you. But here we are, there's the military report as well, with the Clans of Enedwaith, or Enedwaith. Beginning in the land of the same name, which is over in the far west, well, not really far west, that's more Lindon, but over in the west of Middle-earth, just north of Gondor. This is the western border of Gondor here, and it's just north of Gondor, just to the west of Isengard and the Gap of Rohan, and to the south and west of the Dunlendings, who begin in this region here up to Tharbad. Enedwaith at the beginning of the game aren't too bad. You get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 provinces, which is quite good for a faction in DAC. Most factions only get 1 or 2. But you can start off with 5, and you start off with 5 reasonably good towns as well. Alkford is as large as you can go. I believe Londangren's only got 1 to go. And Barradvin is a motte and bailey, which is quite good for the clans to start with a castle. Other than that, a reasonably simple start. There's nothing particularly hard or tricky at the start of the game for Enedwaith, but at least you get quite a few provinces to kickstart your economy. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to expand, and you're going to wonder where you can expand to as Enedwaith, and the answer to that is everywhere. The only restriction on your expansion is you can't go east unless you wish to attack Dunland, because they border you all the way down here, all the way down to that line just there. So if you're looking for rebel settlements, you've got options to your south in the castle of Balorn, the town of Gund. There's a castle there called Derwath, which I believe Isengard get on turn 1 actually, so you'll border with Isengard immediately. However, your real chance and your real prospects are just north of the river Gwathlo. You've got the ancient Númenorian city of Londare there on the mouths of the Gwathlo, and just across the river there's also the town of Suduri from the kingdom of Saraline. And those two have rich pickings. Londare is one of the wealthiest cities you'll be able to control until you start taking Rohan's lands. So it's highly advisable to take Londare as fast as you can. There's a few more villages here. There's Bregost, I believe that one's called, possibly something else. And then there's also the castle up there of Argond. And these are all rebel. And then there's also quite a few rebel provinces between you and the Bree lands. So your options are more to unite the 2 sections of land that you start with. Also interesting to note that Enedwaith are now, I believe, possibly the only faction, Umbar as well, who start with their regions separated by something. So you don't have one large landmass that you control, you have a gap between your areas, and there's a gap between the village of Dolvorn and your main heartland of Alkford and Enedwaith itself. But rebel expansion is to head to the river and then claim all of the towns along the river, because they are where the money lies. The next thing you want to know as Enedwaith is who do you start allied with and who do you start as enemies with. And well, Enedwaith are entirely unique in that they start allied with no one and they start at war with no one. They are completely neutral. Your only enemy is the enemy that everyone has, which is bandits and rebels. You are completely free to do whatever you want. You can attack Dunland, you can ally with Dunland, you can attack the elves, you can ally with the elves, you can play Enedwaith as good, you can play Enedwaith as bad. And I'll explain a bit more about that when we get to the scripts as well. Obviously, in terms of locations, Gondor start to your south, and they are your ancient and historical enemy. So if you are to play Enedwaith true to lore, you would ignore almost everyone, but you would attack Gondor with fervour. You would attack them wholeheartedly. As I'm sure people have heard me explain many, many times, the only reason Enedwaith don't like Gondor is because when the Númenorians landed on the shores of Middle-earth, they harvested wood from these regions, especially from the woodlands here of Erin Vaughan, and they drastically deforested this area, and the clans have never forgiven them, and so they have a bitter resentment of the descendants of Númenor in the Gondorians and the Northern Dunedain. So if you are to play to lore, those should be your true enemies, but it is entirely up to yourself who you attack. Obviously, you've got Isengard to your east, who will border you after turn 1, and beyond them is Rohan, and you've got Dunland on your eastern side, as I've already mentioned, and the lands of the Bree land are up to your north, and after only a short time, you'll also find yourself bordering with the Elves of Linden. However, the way that we've set up the relationships in the game, because that defines who attacks who, you are unlikely to be attacked by the Elves of Linden. You are, however, very likely to be attacked by Gondor, Bree, Northern Dunedain, and also Isengard. Whilst you can ally quite easily with Dunland, Isengard don't really like you, so there's an interesting little bit of power play there. Although in every single game I've ever played the Clans of Enedwaith, I've always attacked Dunland because of the advantages it brings by bringing them under your banner. Which again, I will explain a little more in when we deal with the scripts. So then we move on to economy, the economy of the clans. Now unfortunately, and this is intertied with their construction restrictions, they're not a wealthy faction. You get quite a few resources in your homeland, so you can ship things out, you can sell things, so that's not too much of a problem. However, because you can't build any town beyond a large town, you don't get the two highest tiers of cities, so minor city and large city. You also can't upgrade any castles whatsoever. So Barad Vin, under the control of the clans, will never upgrade because they can't go up to Wooden Castle, and they can't go up to Castle beyond that either. So you lose out on the top tier of all the economical buildings. So the chance for economy is greatly hampered due to that. However, as I say, the resources that you get in your starting region are numerous and many. So you do get the opportunity to at least make good money out of trade. So it's worthwhile trying to make trade with everyone and focusing on only one enemy at a time. And then you'll get maximum use of all the resources that you can see dotted around your heartland of Lugia. Other than that, though, there's no real restrictions otherwise. You can build all the farms that you can build. You can build all the markets that you can build. It's only the town levels that are restricted, and then obviously the buildings that come with those town levels. So they're the only restrictions there. But otherwise, whilst Enedwaith aren't one of the richest factions in the game, they aren't the poorest either. And they're also the fact that their troops are so cheap allows the clans to get quite a lot of money through that. Because you get remarkably cheap units in comparison to other factions. They're not horrendously cheap, but they are certainly cheaper than Gondor or Dol Amroth or the Elves, or almost every enemy around you will have more expensive units apart from Bree and Dunland, so you've got that in your favour. Dealing with construction, it's also worth mentioning a unique feature that belongs to the clans, it belongs to Cand, it belongs to Anduin and Dunland, and that is that your barracks line is unique. You don't get the standard barracks that all the other factions get. You get your own Wildman barracks, and I wonder if it's built here. Yeah, it's called a muster ground. There it is. There's a muster ground, and what this does is instead of having a stables, an archery range, and a barracks, you have one building that does all three things. Because you're Wildmen, you don't really focus on buildings. You don't have large populations. You're not really a warring faction. So all of your units come from one structure line. Now what this will mean is that if you take a town of anyone who wasn't an aforementioned faction that I said a moment ago, then you will need to build your own barracks in those new towns. But likewise, if they take your cities, if enemies take your cities, they will have to construct their own barracks line as well. So expansion for the clans is reasonably limited, or not necessarily limited, but it's slower than other factions because you have to build an extra building after taking a town in order to even train anything. But the building goes, you get a muster ground, which is this one. It gives you all those units, and then it upgrades to what's called an ancillary training ground, and essentially that is cheaper and builds faster than the normal ground, and that adds your archers and your cavalry, and that adds the archers and the cavalry to the main building. So your main barracks building is quite expensive. It's somewhere up in the region of 4 or 5 grand if I remember rightly. We should be able to check actually, because we should be able to build it somewhere that won't have it. Muster ground. Oh no, it's 1,800. Oh, we made it much cheaper. Well, right, so it's 1,800, but the ancillary training grounds is only 1,425, so it's a bit cheaper, and it builds faster by a turn. And then after the ancillary training grounds, you then get one further upgrade, which gives you the elites, but that's only available obviously after the barracks event. However, The clans are a pre-barracks event faction. All of your work is going to be done before the barracks event, because that's when you've got the numbers to outdo your enemies. Because after the barracks event, Bree, Isengard, Gondor, Northern Dunedain, Elves, Rohan, everyone around you will massively outclass you. They will get horrendous kill ratios to your units. So you've really got to do your work before the barracks event to get the money and get the infrastructure ready, so that you're prepared for the amount of troops you're going to have to throw at your enemies in order to succeed. And to that end, you get 2 of your barracks levels before the barracks event, and as you can see, you already have that much choice before you've even kicked into the barracks event. Whereas factions like Gondor only get 3 units of militia and an archery and 3 units of militia and a unit called a peacekeepers and 1 cavalry. So Gondor's mainline pre-barracks event are 5 units, and you, as you can see there, you greatly outnumber them. So you've got to use that to your advantage. In terms of the guilds that the Clans of Enedwaith get, you're not too low on the guilds. You get the Fighters Pit of Mordor fame, but twisted for the clans, which just gives you experience to troops trained and then troops trained everywhere. And you also get the Archers Guild, because the clans are a skirmishing and missile faction. So you get a bonus for all of your archers, and then a melee weapon bonus for ranged troops from the Elder Hunters Guild at the end. And those are all the guilds you get. There is a 3rd guild, and we'll explain that again when I talk about the scripts in just a moment. The Hall of Elkford, which you can see in the clan hall in the capital, is part of a script as well, part of the Enedwaith clan script. And the Great Clan Hall gives you some Moot Keepers available before the barracks event, and Moot Keepers are these guys here, quite possibly your best unit. So I shall say that again so that you can look at their stats and cry if you're a person that kind of likes really overpowered units. Then this unit here with 9 attack and 15 defense is one of your best units. So that gives you an idea of how weak the clans really are. 15 defense is the same as Dol Amroth and Gondor's not even medium tier. The tier before medium tier, just after militia, is around 15. So as you can see, you are greatly outmatched. Numbers and tricky, being tricksy, as we'll see in the second half of the video, are how you win the battles. They're also quite cheap though, as you can also see. I mean, this is your best unit, costs 780. Like Gondor and Dol Amroth's best unit are costing 1,500. So you've got that advantage as well. You're cheaper on that front. But we come at last to the scripts I've spoken so much about. And the first one we'll talk about, because I had that screen up at the beginning, is Unite the Clans. This is a small side additional script that quite simply stipulates that if you control all of Enedwaith, which runs from Balorn and Gund all the way north, with everything in between all the way to Argond, and from Dolvorn down with Bregost, Suduri, Londare, through your own land and the 3 provinces of Dunland. I have to make that clear. You have to capture Dunland, because Dunland technically are a clan of Enedwaith. So you have to capture them as well. But if you capture all of those, you get to unite the clans, and you get an extra building which won't show because it's you have to complete the script, I believe, to get it to show. But you get an extra building, and it's called an Enedwaith Clan Hall, or an Enedwaith Guild Hall, I believe. Just something very simple like that. And it's only available in your Heartlands, and it gives you a melee weapon bonus, I believe. It gives you just a few bonuses to the town itself. But it also gives you access to perhaps your greatest unit, or not perhaps, your greatest unit. They're called Guardians of Enedwaith. They're a javelin unit. You'll see them in the second half of this video, and they are absolute monsters. And so it's highly advisable to try and unite the clans, because they are your only avenue to deal with the highly armed and armoured elites of the enemies around you. So that's Unite the Clans. The script literally is as simple as capture all of those regions, and then the turn after you've captured all of them, you'll get the message. So if you've captured everything you think you need to capture and you haven't been given the message, it means you're missing something. So just take a look at a map, see where Enedwaith is, and use your initiative. Just keep expanding, keep capturing around you, and eventually you will unite the clans. But it does explain it in the message at the beginning, as I say, so do bear that in mind. The next script is one that was written by Firefreak 111, also the creator of the map that we, Moss and Dak and many others now use. And that script is quite simply that every now and then you'll get small little missions to go and do things. Because you're called the Clans of Enedwaith because you're made up of lots of different clans, but Clan Lugia, which is where your capital is, are in control. And these rebel provinces like Londare, Malfin, Suduri, which is Saraline, and others are they're rebel clans. But you've already captured the Kyril clan; they're under your throne. The Malranaith clan, and the well, the Bay of Isen isn't a clan, but so each region is a clan, and you get a little script. It kicks off every now and then, and it just either sends you on a mission, or it reports that the clans have gathered and nothing of interest has happened, and even it can warn you of a pre-coming attack. So one of the scripts that I know that happens, because it's happened to me a few times, is if you take Londare, there can be a little script that kicks in that the Bree landers are going to come and try and claim it from you because they fear you're getting too powerful. So an army from Bree spawns and comes to attack you. Similarly, if you take Siduri, some rebels might spawn and come and try and take it back. But you're always warned of these through small, little, interesting messages. And that's one of the unique things about the clans. Is they've got this little script, and it's essentially a twist on the council missions, the vanilla feature, except that it's a bit more unique to the clans, and it just gives you more interesting missions that are more unique to you as a Lord of the Rings faction rather than a Medieval 2 faction. So that's another script that affects you. And the final thing that the clans have, which I spoke of briefly at the beginning, is that oh, excuse me, sorry. You have the ability to be good or evil, and this is reflected. Oh dear, I'm terribly sorry. This is reflected in your ring choice. So if you're playing as the Clans of Enedwaith, and you get the ring, your options depend on who you have allied and who you have attacked. So for example, if you choose to ally with Isengard or Dunland or any other evil faction, the game will consider you as playing clans as evil. So when you get the ring, you'll be asked to return it to Sauron, and he'll come back and he'll destroy the world. However, if you fight against the forces of evil and you ally with the forces of good, you'll be considered a good faction, and you will take it to Elrond, and then you'll get the option to go and destroy it. There is no neutral option with the ring, though, unfortunately, because Sauron is such a threat. Essentially, if you are against Sauron in Middle-earth and he comes back, you are all going to die, and if you are fighting with Sauron in Middle-earth and he comes back, you might stand a chance of living. There is no neutral. If Sauron came back and the clans were neither fighting for good or evil, Sauron would kill them. So you have to make your choice. You either kill him or you join him. So those are the two options when you get the ring. There's nothing else that really reflects the good or evil nature of it, and you can swing either way. So obviously you can attack Isengard and the Northern Dunedain, but I believe it depends on who you ally with to decide whether you're good or evil. And I'm unsure what happens with the ring if you stay neutral, but I'm fairly certain that it will either force you to choose whether you want to be good or evil, or it will or basically just nothing will happen until you ally with someone. But I'm uncertain on that regard. But the chances are you would have allied with someone, or you would have been at war with someone by then, so the game will know. And those are all the scripts unique to Enedwaith. Now, in terms of difficulty, Enedwaith are medium difficulty, I would suggest. Now, this is because although your troops are weaker than everyone around you, that's a given, you don't get the best economy. There are other factions out there who are going to earn a lot more money than you. However, because you start at war with no one, and you start in a reasonably safe position with lots of expansion prospects. I mean, you've got 4 regions here straight away, you've got 2 regions south of you straight away. That's a lot of expansion prospects. Their early game is actually quite easy. The only difficulty comes with Enedwaith if you're not prepared. By the time the barracks event kicks in, then you're in for a world of hurt, because everyone around you, even Bree and even Dunland, are better than you after the barracks event. After the barracks event, you and Anduin are tied for the weakest units in the game, so you've got to really do all your work before the barracks event. So it's quite a rushed campaign, but it's not particularly difficult. Now, in terms of tips, the only tips really come with your military. With your campaign, obviously, the tips are always just expand. Capture every rebel province that you can, and then take a step back and just see what's happening. Are Dunland stronger than Bree? Then maybe ally with Dunland and wipe out Bree. Or maybe ally with Bree and wipe out Dunland. It's that kind of thing. As soon as you've captured everywhere that's rebel, you can just stop and have a look at everyone and see what's happening. The only things that are likely to happen is as soon as you make a border with Gondor, they probably will attack you because they really think they're better than you. And they'll stream through the gap of the White Mountains and they will come for your lands. Lyndon will 9 times out of 10 leave you alone. Bree will often leave you alone because they'll be busy with Dunland. And Dunland will often leave you alone because they'll be busy with Bree. And Isengard get trapped in by Dunland and they're fighting Rohan. So really Gondor's your only threat, and your choices are either obliterate them or desperately try and make peace with them, like bribe them, try and ally with them, something like that. They're the only faction that is likely to attack you straight away, so You've just got to be prepared for that. But most of the tips with Enedwaith come from the second half of the video, where we look at their roster. And there we are. That is the first half of this video. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of an idea about what to do on the campaign map when playing as Enedwaith. And now we shall load up a custom battle, and we can dive into the intricacies of their army. As I've already stated, Enedwaith are a javelin and missile faction, with heavy emphasis made on the javelin aspect of that. They get the best javelin throwers in the game with the Guardians of Enedwaith. They also get 4 types of javelin throwers, which is more than almost anyone else.
Units, await my orders.
And their javelin throwers also have incredible abilities which most other factions don't get. But first of all, we'll start as we always do by just panning out and having a look. And straight away, as you can see, you're not a cavalry faction. You get 2 units of cavalry for the entire game. One is a very, very weak, basic, nothing router unit or flank attack unit to scare your enemy. And there they are, the Enedwaith Outriders. And the other is a javelin on a horse. And those are those. So you're not a cavalry faction. You have to bear that in mind. Your siege equipment is not as good as other factions. You don't get as many missiles, and it costs a bit more. So you can't rely on siege to bring down skirmishing units. You have to out skirmish them by skirmishing them yourself, if that makes sense. Alright, so let's line up the militia units as we always do. Or I say militia units, these are just all the units that you can get before the barracks event. And you will see from what I'm clicking on that almost your entire army comes before the barracks event. So let's line all those up. One other thing that you might notice, if you're keen-eyed, is the number of units, even though there are no trees on this map whatsoever, the number of units who are currently hidden. And that also plays into the hands that you're a skirmishing faction, because most of your units can hide anywhere. So you've got your Greyflood Axemen, you've got Greyflood Raiders, Erenvorn Woodsmen, Hunters Guildsmen, River Elders, Elder Guildsmen, and Foresters of Haleth are all hide anywhere units. So they will all be able to hide anywhere you like, which allows you to skirmish and scare your enemy to no end. Alright, and as you can see in front of me, that literally is it. This entire group here are all available before the barracks event. You can see how double your roster is available before the barracks event, or sorry, 3/4. Oh, 2/3 rather. We'll get there in the end. And then the rest are, these small pitiful number here, are available after, but you have to take them out because they're your bodyguard unit. So that is your choice after the barracks event, and that is your choice before. So you're just giving credence to the fact that you're a pre-barracks event faction. But your very, very first and basic units are outlaws.
Brigands.
These guys.
Bandits.
These are a mercenary unit that you can train, very similar to the unit which are just called bandits. But they've been edited a little bit to look a little different. They don't have any green on them, they're a bit darker. And they are available, you and Dunland get them almost straight away from your farm. And they're a completely awful defense unit with a really high attack. They're savages, they're raw savages. They can hide anywhere, so they're not hiding anywhere at the moment because they're my general, and generals can't hide anywhere. But they can hide anywhere normally. They're very, very cheap to recruit, but because they're mercenaries and they thrive on the promise of war and on pillaging and whatnot, they have a very high upkeep cost for a unit of this low quality. Their upkeep cost is something like 250, whereas your elite units are 300. So you can see that they're expensive in the long run, but they're a quick unit to throw at your enemy early game to do high damage, but take quite a lot of losses. And that they kind of are an embodiment of the clan strategy, really. Throw everything you can at them with high attack, but you won't be able to last long in prolonged melee. So it's all about the initial attack, the initial wave, the initial kill, and if you can't kill them in that initial attack, then you've either got to run or be really clever. And the bandits are an embodiment of that, or the outlaws. Alright, the next unit that you're going to get, there is a sort of a distinction in which units you'll get before the barracks event, but really, because of the way the barracks works, where it's all infantry, then it's archers and cavalry in the second one, really these are all of the same level. So I'll just go along the line, and if you can't train them yet, it's because you need to upgrade the barracks to get the ancillary training grounds. But anyway, next we come to the Grey Flood Axemen. These are heavy strike infantry, very high attack, charge of 5, effective against armour, but as you can see they have no armour. Their defence skill is 5, but it's all on their defence skill. And quite simply that will mean that if they are on the attack, they essentially have no armour. So they're really, really strong on their initial attack. You can charge, you can flank, you can break the enemy, but you'll want to withdraw them almost immediately because they will drop like flies. There's quite a lot of them to make up for that. And they can hide anywhere, so they get even more. They're even more effective on the charge, but their armor is pitiful. And another feature that's reminiscent of all the clans units is you have terrible morale and you have terrible morale response. So whilst these guys have an average morale, which isn't that bad, average, as I say, is average, but that will permeate through all of your units. So everyone has average morale. Only really orcs have worse morale than the clans, so you're not very good in prolonged melee because your units don't have the fortitude for it. But the Grey Flood Axemen, they're the ones that flank round the edge. They're the guys that charge in, hit from the back, hit from the side, and do the damage. Right, the Grey Flood Raiders, these are your first javelin unit. These guys can hide anywhere. They have a javelin attack of 8. They only have a 2 melee and they only have a 5 defense, so they're awful in normal melee. They're like peasants, basically. Peasants with javelins. But the feature that they get that most other factions don't is they have 4 javelins, whereas most factions get 3. They have a 60-meter range, which is better than most other factions, and they're quite accurate, which is unique for them because they're a militia-style unit. As you can see, they've got poor morale with only an average morale response. All of the Enedwaith units get bonuses in forest, grassland and snow, and you're not very good in deserts. So unless you're attacking Harad, you're always getting a bonus to your attack. So that's worth knowing as well, because Enedwaith is a land of hills, mountains, rivers, grasslands, forests. It's got the lot, so they're good in almost all of it. But anyway, so these ones are your first javelins. You got good stamina, which is another good feature of Enedwaith. Quite a lot of your units have good stamina because you are hardy fisherfolk. You're lumbermen, you're fishermen. None of you are working in a desk writing things down. You're all out there fighting for survival. Whereas obviously the Gondorians are a bit more plush. I mean, they train, they have militia. These guys have been called up to defend their homes, so they've got what they've got. But the Grey Flood Raiders are a very solid javelin unit because they have a higher range, higher accuracy, and more missiles than other factions' javelins at this tier. The next javelin unit are the Angron Raiders. These are better than the Grey Flood Raiders, but there's less of them. 177 plays 202. They cost a little bit more. However, these are the first ones where they're good against armor. Again, they can hide anywhere, but these ones are armor piercing. They've also got a better missile attack of 10. Their defense is infinitely better of 8, which is a big difference, and a melee attack of 4. So these guys, once they've thrown their javelins, they can actually then hold in the battle as well. They're not going to fall like flies. Again, as you can see, an improvement on the missiles. They've got 1 more, and their accuracy again is high. And these ones have got good average morale as well. So you're starting to get the better units. These are your main line javelin units. Your army should consist mostly of Angron Raiders, because javelins are how Enedwaith win. You need to bring down as many units as you can before they reach your line, because they will tear your line apart. And that's the theory behind Enedwaith. It's also worth mentioning a weird quirk of Medieval 2 is a unit like this, the Grey Flood Axemen, who are crouched down over there. They have no armor. So you'd think that when you take them to a blacksmith and you give them armor, that will go to 1, and it will display 1, and the defense will be 6. However, there is a theory, and it's reasonably substantiated, that the difference from armor 0 to armor 1 is actually the effective distance of armor 0 to armor 4. So upgrading from 0 to 1 is like giving them 4 extra points of armor. But the game will only show you that it's given 1, but when it's doing the calculations, it will show you that it's given an extra 4. Now this has circulated for some time. People strongly believe this, and I have no reason to doubt it, so it's worth mentioning that. The extra upgrade at the very beginning for any unit which has no armor is actually more beneficial than the game will tell you. But right, now we come to your main line units. There are 3 of these. They're called river units. I'll bring them forward just to show you. These are your main units. These are your battle line units. The first of which are the River Swordsmen. These guys here. They've got a 9 defense, which is dependable. It's the same as the militia of other factions when this is your medium tier, but ignore that. In comparative to the rest of your army, these are your battle line. You've got River Swordmen and you've got River Spearmen. Now, as you would imagine, the River Spearmen have a higher defense but a worse attack. So the River Swordmen have a good charge of 5, which is rare for a sword unit, and they have an attack of 5, which is also quite good for a sword unit. Most militia are on 3 or 2 with their attack and 1 or 2 with their charge. So they're very, very good. They're the main line flanking, striking a unit, but they can kind of hold their own in the battle as well. They can't hide anywhere, but they're adept at hiding in woods, which means they're at the middle of the 3 possible hiding options. Again, reliable in the places I've said before, and good stamina, which is also good, but unfortunately, again, only average morale. The River Spearmen have the ability to do a shield wall, which looks awesome because of their giant shields, which I really like. They're one of my favourite units just because of that shield. And that's reflected in their high shield value. A shield value of 4 is very, very good. And their defense of 11, which is also very, very good. But as you see, lower attack, lower charge. So these ones are holding the line while your River Swordmen are checking from the sides. Your River Archers are peppering from the back, and you've got Javelin men dotted about. They can make shield wall, and otherwise they're the same as the River Swordmen. Right, and finally you get River Archers, who are, as the name would suggest, your archers. These aren't your first unit of archers, but they are your mainline unit of archers who we're dealing with at the moment. Now they only have a defense of 6 because they don't have a shield, but otherwise they have reasonably similar defense and armor of 3. But their defense obviously is 6, so like most you'd expect with most archer units, don't leave these guys in battle because they will die. They've got a melee attack of 3, so the worst of the 3 units. Charge of 3, the worst of the 3 units again. But they can use stakes, which is rare for a military style unit. And they can, again, adept at hiding in woods. And other features that Enedwaith have. Average morale response, forest, grassland, snow, all those sorts of things. 24 missiles on average, 170 meters, but only an average range, average accuracy. So they're not the best archers, but they're dependable. And that's the point of these 3. They are dependable. These are your main line. Your army should mostly consist of these, with spatterings of javelins and other things to back up on the sides. But the first archer unit that you are likely to get are the Hunters Guildsmen, or Men of the Hunt. They can hide anywhere, which is a nice little feature. Very poor stats, missile and armor wise, and obviously only a 2 missile, which is also not very good. They're not very good, really, but because they can hide anywhere, and they have a 170 meter range, which is very good for a militia unit, with an average accuracy, which again is very good for a militia unit. They're adept at peppering the enemy before they get in. You don't want these guys in battle at all because they will just fall like kindling, but you should have quite a few of them in your army to help thin the ranks of your enemy, because anything that, again, I reiterate, anything you can do to ensure your enemy dies before they reach your line is how you're going to win, because once they reach your line, the chances are they outclass you. So these guys are paramount to that. They're of incredible importance, mostly because they're dirt cheap. These guys are so cheap, it's unbelievable. So you'll want quite a lot of these in your army. The final pre-barracks event unit are the Erin Vaughan Woodsmen, or Erin Vaughan Woodsmen. These are AOR, as you'd imagine. They're only available in Dol Vaughan and Bregost. If it's not called Bregost, I apologise, but I'm fairly certain it's called Bregost. But they are just quite a good spear unit. A defense of 6, which is the same as your, well, reasonably the same as your dependable river units. But with quite a weak attack and charge. And they're one of the few units in the game that can still do a Schiltrum. Which means they can't be flanked, but because they're so weak they die quite easily. But the bonus that you're going to have with these is, as you've probably noticed from your army, you're not wildly good against cavalry. You don't really have any particular bonus against cavalry. So Erin Vaughan Woodsmen and River Spearmen are your pre-barracks event cavalry killers, and that's exactly what these guys are for. They have a bonus against horses. They do not have a bonus against wargs, nor do they have a bonus against oliphants or great beasts of Mordor. They're only good against horses because the savage nature of wargs means that the poor morale of these guys, they just can't deal with it. So they're only good against horses. And as I said, they're only available in a few regions at the very beginning of the game. But if you can, you train them. You'll want to train them because apart from the River Spearmen, nothing in your pre-lineup is good against cavalry. Apart from the fact that javelins are just very good against everything. They're really your only hope. Right, your pre-barracks event cavalry, as I've already mentioned, are both very weak. You've got Grey Flood Riders, who are just Grey Flood Raiders, your first javelin unit, but on a horse. They've got 1 extra missile than their foot counterpart, but otherwise you can't really rely on them for much. Charge bonus of 3, which isn't very good for a cavalry. A defense of 5, which is awful. And a melee attack of 2, very weak again. They're good at hiding in woods, though, which is useful. And their secondary attack Oh, their secondary attack is listed anyway, so that's irrelevant. But they're not very good at all. You want to use them to assassinate a key enemy target. So ride them in, find who you're looking for, bring him down with their 5 missiles, which is a lot. And they've got high accuracy, which is very good. So you're going to ride into the enemy line or ride round the flanks, take down a unit of importance, and then essentially ride them away and wait till the end of the battle, or use them if you absolutely must. But they will drop very easily in battle, and if they come up, even if they if they look at a spearman, they're likely to die. So you've got to be very, very careful with them. The same is almost true of the Enedwaith Outriders, except they get a good charge bonus. They've got a charge bonus which is reminiscent of a good cavalry unit. Their defense is a bit better, so they can last a bit longer, but you're not going to want to keep these guys in prolonged melee. They are, however, good against horses, camels and wargs because they've got a spear, so they're one of the few units again in the early game which you can use to counter cavalry. So these are essentially only really used if you come up against Rohan in the early game or the wargs of Isengard, because the Dunlendings only really get a couple of units of cavalry. You'll only see 1 or 2 in each army, but Rohan obviously is made of cavalry, so they might only be used when you fight against Rohan. And now we come to the after the barracks event. We'll take the Guardians out because they're kind of a tier above, and these are the units that you're going to get after the barracks event. There are 4 of them. 2 are Moot units, Moot Wardens and Moot Keepers. You get River Elders and Foresters of Haleth. So we'll start with the Foresters of Haleth. These are your elite archers, if you can call them that. Their defense is 12, which isn't too bad. It's elite for Enedwaith, it's poor for everyone else. But a missile attack of 5 is very good. Hide anywhere is very good for archers, and stakes is also obviously very good for archers. They've got excellent stamina, which is very, very useful. Not a lot of units have excellent stamina. But again, only average morale, and this is your elite unit. So, however, these guys are considered as rangers, so they've got one of the longest ranges in the game, very high accuracy, and a lot of missiles. So Foresters of Haleth are a must for your army, because they, again, add importance to the fact that the enemy will die before they reach you. And these guys will be able to bring them down a long time before they reach you because of their insane range. Next up are your River Elders. These are your after the barracks event cavalry killers. Because they are spearmen. Again, they have the ability to hide everywhere. They're good against mounts, excellent stamina, defense of 14, reminiscent of Enedwaith's elite units, attack of 8, which is very good for a spear unit, and a nice charge of 5 as well. So just an all-round dependable unit in the later game, but again, unfortunately, only an average morale and an average morale response. So none of your units are going to last that long if big and bad things happen, such as being flanked, taking a lot of losses, your general dying, reinforcements for the enemy arriving. Anything like that will all have a big effect on your army, so you've got to be cautious. But River Elders are a very dependable mainline late game unit. And then you've also got the Moot Keepers. Now these are available from turn 1, but you will only really be able to train 2 of them, and you'll have to wait till after the barracks event to really use them. They are only available in Alkford, so they're an AOR, but these, as I've already mentioned, are your best unit. They've got average morale, but they've got a very good morale response, so they're not going to take a big hit when bad things happen. They inspire nearby troops as well. I knew they had that one. So having these on the battlefield will make everyone else around you better. They have excellent stamina again, which is reminiscent of elite Enedwaith units, and they're adept at hiding in woods, which is good. They're not armor piercing though, but they've got a good shield and they've got a good defense, so strong battle line units that you can really rely on. And then before we talk to the Guardians, we've got the Moot Wardens. These are pikemen. These are available everywhere. A defense of 14, which is good. Attack of 6, which is quite good for a pike. They can form spear wall, which you can imagine, like all pikes really can. They're adept at hiding in woods, good against mounts, you'd imagine. Everything that you would imagine a pike unit to be. So they're very, very good against cavalry, obviously, cavalry killers, but pikes also have the advantage they can keep enemy units at bay. So the pikemen are one of the best defensive units in the game, because enemy infantry just kind of get bottlenecked up in front of them and can't really do anything. But you've got to keep their flanks secure, as is true of all pikemen. But if you can, they are a real force on the battlefield. So the 2 Moot units are your best, with the Wardens more readily available, so often more useful. And finally, the last units to talk about are the Guardians of Enedwaith. As I've already mentioned, these units are only available once you've united Enedwaith. They are the only unit which actually has heavy armour, stolen from the smithies and the captured prisoners of Gondor, intertwined with the rough cloaks of Dunland and Enedwaith. They are insane, and the reason that they're insane is because their javelins have a missile attack of 12, which in itself is very, very good. However, they are effective against armor, and what it doesn't say here is that their javelins are also body piercing, which means that the javelin will go through the first unit and attack any unit behind it. They also, to make their javelins a little stronger in the files, their javelins do more damage to a larger area than it's kind of a cheat-ish, but what essentially it just means that they can bring down a full unit of heavily armored anything in a couple of javelin throws. They have 5 missiles, they have 70 range, which is good for javelin, very high accuracy again, and armor piercing, body piercing and area of effect javelins mean that these guys will tear through anything. I've known them to bring down Eldarinway elves in seconds, and people have just completely not expected it, and it can turn the battle. It's incredible the strength these guys have. Now, when they finish with their javelins, they are also good against cavalry, because their secondary weapon is essentially just their javelin turned the other way up. So they're just two-handed spear units. So they're very good against cavalry once they're done with their javelins. A defense of 20, which is up there with medium and upper medium tier of Gondor, so they can fight. They can go toe-to-toe with Gondor, which is good. And they frighten nearby enemy infantry. So there's nothing about these guys that's bad. Apart from, obviously, they cost quite a bit of money. So you do have to really get your infrastructure up and ready when you are fighting against them, when you are to use them, because otherwise they will drain you dry, because they do cost quite a lot. And you have to bear that in mind. And that is the roster of Enedwaith. So as I've done in every battle so far, we will now just line everyone up and do a mock battle against, I believe I set Gondor as my enemy this time. So line everyone up, get them all behind, stand in a line, don't run, get the cavalry on the end. So as they begin, so as I mentioned, Enedwaith are all about killing the enemy before they arrive. So you've got your javelin men to really bring down. Javelin are very good against an individual target, so you want to pinpoint who in your enemy army is a threat and bring them down with your javelins. You want your archers to do exactly what they're doing now, just pepper the enemy, just keep them engaged, because as soon as the enemy charges your line, they will outclass you. We're up against an army of Gondor here, and just a spattering of all their units, nothing particularly good, apart from there's a couple of units of Fountain Guard and some Osgiliath veterans in the back. Oh, our cavalry have charged into some militia where they'll probably take the battle quite nicely, but if they're flanked then there'll be trouble. There's our moot wardens lined up and ready for the charge. Spearmen hitting our keepers. Ah, the first javelins are being thrown by the Clans of the Guardians. Look at the body count, look at the numbers drop. Second wave is thrown. They've gone from 110 to 85 in one throw of Guardians javelins. That's what we're dealing with here. Against the Fountain Guard, there were 119 of them. And there's now 100 of them. 19 Fountain Guard in a single wave. That's just incredible. But I'll just go up and down the line. So tips with Enedwaith are, as I've mentioned, use the fact that you can hide anywhere to your advantage. You want to ambush everyone that you can. Use the fact that you've got more javelins than anyone else, and more javelins as in your javelin units are larger, cheaper, they have more missiles, they have longer range, they're more accurate. Use that to your advantage. If you're not using javelin units, you're going to lose the game. In terms of who to attack, I would always recommend attacking Gondor. But it depends. No, well, I play Enedwaith as good actually, so I tend to try and ally with Gondor, and I attack Dunland. I unite Enedwaith, and then I move on Isengard to support Rohan. But it's up to you to do what you want. Enedwaith are completely unique in that regard. You can do whatever you want. Oh, we've got a unit surrounded there. River Spearmen. Gondorians are pressing from all sides.
Our foolish general has thrown his life
Our general's
away.
dead, this guy.
Perhaps our chances of victory with it.
He's never going to survive against those Fountain Guard. They'll fall like there's no tomorrow. But other than that, with Enedwaith, just do what you like, really. As I said in the first half, take rebel provinces and then just have a look at the world, see what's happening, and attack who you want to attack. Attack who is the greatest threat to you, because that's obviously the point. In terms of victory conditions, you don't have to defeat anyone to win. You just have to claim 45 regions in the long game, and I believe 25 or 30 in the short game. which is again a feature unique to Enedwaith. You don't have to even attack anyone to win. You can just let other people defeat people and then swoop in and take the rebel provinces if you want to play. That game will take ages to do that, but you can do that if you want. There's no requirement to attack anyone to win. You are completely your own army. You can do whatever you want. Look at some Hunters Guildsmen getting their shot off. They're about to be flanked. Solid archer barrage though, but the cavalry have made the line. That wasn't even a strong charge and they've taken 20, maybe 30 men out. We're not very good. But Enedwaith are really fun. They are up there. They're in my top 5 favourite factions. They're a unique faction, one of the DAC's like unique features. You can find them in other mods, but you'd have to play vanilla with just Clans of Enedwaith. But that really will be the end of this one. So I hope it's given you a little bit of an idea about how to play as the clans, what to do, what to expect. And to just really give you a snapshot of how fun they can be. But until we speak again, I am Arachír Galudirithon, the head of Divide and Conquer, and so Navar Naden Pedimad, and farewell.